Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about how you get a contract for an academic book. And what I'm going to do in this video is give you a broad overview of the process, and then we're going to have some subsequent videos that dive in and give more details and nuances about some of these bigger topics that are going to come up. So, all right, how do you get this contract? We've talked about this a little bit before, okay? You might get contacted by an editor, you might have a great idea. But either way, you've got the idea, you're ready to go. So now what are the next steps? So first of all, make sure you have a suitable publishing house. Now, if you've been contacted by an editor, this is probably done. You've got a suitable publishing house identified, okay? If you have not connected with an editor yet, then you're going to want to make sure you do a little bit of research to make sure that your idea fits in line with what they publish, okay? And you probably already know this as an academic, right? Like you can just pick up some books that are probably in your own professional library and see who publishes them and go and take a look on their website and just see, right, hey, does my stuff fall in line with this, okay? And if it does, that's great, all right? So you want to figure out where you're going to send this proposal to. So once you have figured out a publishing house, again, I'm going to come back to this connecting with an editor yet, because I really feel like this is important. You've got a publishing house, but if you don't have an editor connection at that publishing house, see if there is a way to connect with one, okay? Sometimes it might be listed on the publisher's website, right? It might have big topics, right? So if I'm in education, so it might say, hey, here's the sort of overall person in charge for education, contact them. You might end up having a conversation with that person, or they might route you right to somebody else, but you might be able to find some contact names to get you connected and have a conversation. They might have a contact form that you can fill out and write in what you need to get you connected to somebody. You might also see who do you know in your field that is published with them, reach out to that person and ask them if they have an editor that they can connect you with. Now, I'm saying all of this because your next big step is to write your book proposal, okay? And it can help if you've had a conversation with an editor up front, and what the editor can do is sort of help you refine that idea, say, hey, put a little more of this, a little less than that. Here's some style tips, right? That sort of a thing. It's not going to hurt you necessarily, right, if you don't have an editor going into this process, because it's a publishing house. If you've got a great idea, you've got a great idea, and they're going to want to make it happen. It just can make things a little smoother if you have an editor up front. That's why I keep stressing that. So you may or may not have an editor, but you're at the proposal process, and what you want to do is on that publishing house's website is find their proposal guidelines, okay? They will have them. You need to adhere to them, all right? I'm going to have an entire video on the proposal process, right? Right now, just know that this is some writing that you're going to have to do. Familiarize yourself with these directions, okay? If you have questions, contact your editor or the publisher. Then you're going to write the proposal following the directions, all right? And then you're going to submit it. Now, again, when you submit it, if you haven't already been having conversations with an editor, then this proposal is going to be looked at by an editor before it goes out. And if you haven't connected with an editor in that publishing house, then somebody may reach back out to you and say, hey, really like this idea, but want to talk to you about a few things, right? And so this is where you might backtrack a little bit if you haven't already talked to an editor, and they might have a conversation with you and tell you some things that they want you to do before the next step happens, which is send your proposal out for review. Now, I want to just add in a caveat here that I don't know everybody's process, right? I don't know every publishing house's process for how you get a book contract, but this is typically what happens, okay? This is a typical common process. And so usually they are going to send your proposal out to 2 or 3 other people in your field and say, hey, what do you think about this? Okay, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? So it's going to usually go out for review. Now, when it goes out for review, the publisher, and again, I'm going to have a separate video on the review process and what to expect, but the publisher will give those reviewers guidelines, specific questions to answer, things to look for. Those reviewers will respond with a write-up, just like for a journal article, and they will typically make a recommendation for if this should move forward with a contract or not, or maybe they might want to see some revisions before you get offered a contract. Very similar in some ways to the academic journal review process, all right? So goes out for review, comes back to the editor. If the reviews are favorable and your book aligns with the publishing house, then generally a contract is going to be offered. And again, I will have a separate video on the whole contract process, what they look like, what to expect, right? What you should look for, etc. Royalties, all of that stuff. So take a look for that. That's going to be coming a little ways down the line in this series.